Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and welcome to a new episode of Ancient Wonders, where we travel all over the world, explore the lost ancient civilizations that most archaeologists just want to forget about and make sure to cover up. Of course, we have spent many years digging into lost ancient civilizations, and a big part of that is what exists below the Great Pyramids. And of course, it's hard to just say the Great Pyramids because there are lineups of pyramid complexes all the way down the Nile in Egypt, which we have explored ourselves on our channel. Well, recently, there was a massive discovery utilizing advanced radar showing a massive underground system below the Great Pyramid of Giza, what they call the Khafre Pyramid, which of course is not related to Khafre at all. And this system is so unbelievable that it basically throws everything archaeologists have been telling us in their own face. And by the way, has been likely the greatest finding of the 21st or 20th century combined. But there's a lot more to it than just a massive underground system. And if only there was someone who was talking about this 8 years ago and went and explored the Great Pyramid itself underground and tried to explain to people that there was a massive underground complex, including massive tunnels that connect the pyramids and the Nile, and of course, other pyramid complexes down the Nile as well. Not to mention, the connection between Turkey and Israel and Iraq and these other places that lead to potentially a massive underground finding that people have not yet put enough research into or have attempted to cover up. If only there was someone that did that, Oh, wait, yeah, that was me. And we're going to show some clips of that to break that down. But before we get into this insane recent news, I urge you to subscribe to us on Ancient Wonders. Our channel on YouTube is Ancient Wonders. It's a channel with my face as a picture, so just be sure to do that and don't accidentally subscribe to these other copies. And of course, we have a channel called Josh Sigurdson on YouTube where we put up a lot of this before. But moreover, make sure to subscribe to us on Rumble or BitChute at World Alternative Media. Now, we also have ways that you can help support us below, including our GoGetFunding.com campaign, Patreon, and Subscribestar, so we appreciate any help we can get to stay alive as we, unfortunately, are usually first to talk about these things, but last to be recognized on it, and so be it. That's the way the world works. Now, let's get into this. So, I wanted to first explain what this finding is. So, the finding, as News 18 wrote, pyramids or ancient power grids, radar scans reveal massive underground structures in Egypt's Giza. And as it mentions, that this massive finding was done by scientists Corrado Malanga from the University of Pisa and Filippo Biondi from the University of Strathclyde using synthetic aperture radar, or SAR, tomography to scan the Khafre Pyramid, and found in their findings a subterranean system that extends approximately 2 kilometers beneath all three pyramids. Now, this is absolutely incredible, and of course something that we tried to hammer home for years. Now, I wasn't sure about how deep it went, but I did say it went through the water table, and I, along with a few others, including Jimmy from Bright Insight, actually went to the subterranean chamber of the Great Pyramid of Giza in 2020 and documented a lot of this. And we talked about the idea of this tunnel that was coming from the bottom of the Great Pyramid of Giza. It seemingly was covered up, and that there was evidence that it went deep, deep down into the ground, which I believed at the time. And many elders in Egypt had said for years that this was the case. So I wanted to ask you if you figure that the tunnels at the bottom of this shaft could lead to other tunnels underneath the Giza Plateau.
Well, in the third level, there is a part that looks like a tunnel and it's not been fully excavated. Mm-hmm. And it's like, why wouldn't it be?
Well,
you're to other structures where we see that these vertical shafts lead to subterranean structures. It's
Right.
not like it's not there.
Well, and your father, of course, famously climbed through a lot of these tunnels in his lifetime.
Oh yeah, back in the days when he was a child living here in the area, most of these tunnels and shafts didn't have any ceilings on it.
Is it true that he
That's
was
in
able
the
to?
40s.
Well, was it true that he was able to go from a place like Saqqara to the Giza Plateau underground?
I am not positive.
You're not positive?
I'm not positive.
Okay.
But is it true that there are tunnels underground that runs for kilometers? Yes, we have the tunnels of Tunat Jabal, again, for example. That goes for like 3 kilometers. We have series of tunnels underneath the step pyramid that if you put them in a straight line, they will form like 5.6 kilometers. We have also the 5 levels underneath the step pyramid that is part of it. And we have also 3 levels here that is located in the pyramid. So in my opinion, the importance of this is how we can see that the underground structure that is carved in the bedrock is connected to the pyramid and not separated from it.
And I think that if the water comes up from here, then there's a way the water's coming in. So I'm guessing that there's some form of tunnelage there. There's a tunnel right there.
Yeah, I think those used to connect to all the other tunnels
These 2 tunnels are the ones that go up and they pump the water, yeah.
for water.
And there's a theory that there are chambers down
Yeah.
there to see. Yeah.
Well, this does look a lot alike to the Osiris shaft in the way that it was constructed. These tunnels are also the origin civilization of the pyramids. Before the pyramids were even there, they were built on top of these sophisticated underground tunnels in Atlantean times, I believe.
I mean, I think there's a lot of significance to this because we see this all over the world. We've both been to Derenkuyu in Turkey. There's massive underground cities all over the world, most of which probably still have not been uncovered and people still don't know about. But in places like Egypt, having such a huge connection to the pyramids and then Saqqara and this idea that people could go underground in Saqqara and find their way all the way over to like the Osiris shaft or under the Giza Plateau. I mean, this to a lot of people is mind-boggling. The very idea of it, because it's not in any textbooks, nobody talks about it.
But of course, no one listened to them. And there's other tunnels coming out of the subterranean chamber, which has totally, by the way, different architecture from the rest of the pyramid. In the scan, by the way, they found other chambers within the Great Pyramid of Giza as well. These tubular things that are coming out of the Great Pyramid of Giza, deep under the ground, they're 648 meters in depth. They have some kind of, they're hollow, but they have some kind of spiral structure going down them, similar to what we see in a battery, by the way. Much like the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid is similar to what we see in a battery as far as the original patents go. And it's all to trigonometry, to phi, and of course, there's all these different golden ratios that match up perfectly within the pyramid, as well as the dimensions matching the speed of sound. And of course, the trigonometry of the entire Earth. Of course, there is the Fibonacci, which we see on display in the Great Pyramid, and a perfect echo channel from the Grand Gallery into the King's Chamber, as well as the Queen's Chamber, and coming up from the subterranean chamber, which, if filled with water, would lead a vibration up that path, which I believe is 70-something meters, into the Grand Gallery, up to the King's Chamber, and would produce energy, which phys.org many years ago, as reported, I think in 2017 or so, had acknowledged through one of their scans that the Great Pyramid of Giza still to this day focuses electromagnetic energy. So that news isn't new at all. There's been scans that have been done years ago that have found a lot of anomalies in this. But these tubular structures are 648 meters in depth, and they merge into 2 cubic structures at the bottom, 80 meters per side. So the structure, and overall, the structure extends 2 kilometers below the pyramids. If you go outside of the Menkaure Pyramid and you go to where the Nile used to run, you will see a large doorway, which I've always wondered about, which seemed to go deep underground beneath the Giza Plateau. Then there's also the issue of the radar that people like Dr. Robert Schoch did years ago in front of the Sphinx that showed a massive structure underneath the Sphinx, which people have seemingly just forgotten about, but it's well documented by Graham Hancock and Dr. Robert Schoch, which shows that there is indeed some structure below the Giza Plateau, And of course, we know there is because we've explored it ourselves. We went with Jimmy from Bright Insight and Ben from UnchartedX as well into the depths of the Osiris shaft, as well with the Khemit school of mysticism. We dug deep into this 3-layer compound with massive boxes, human bones, and at the very bottom, touching the water table, between the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid of Giza. Deep in the ground, it's almost impossible to have been built the way it was. The boxes don't fit. It doesn't make any sense how this thing was built. But anyway, you'll find 4 obelisks at the bottom part of the structure with a box in the middle and a hole in the ground where there's been a lot of theories about it, but that something could come underneath it and actually attach to it from below. And this thing had some kind of electric power. The whole Giza Plateau, by the way, looks like a giant electrical grid. I've been almost arrested several times on the Giza Plateau looking in some of the deep holes in the area, climbing over a lot of the ruins in the area. But nonetheless, in the Osiris shaft, it fills with water regularly, and it has a big archway in it that leads to another area that Dr. Zahi Hawass, who also, by the way, says he doesn't believe in radar, he's an idiot. He was head of antiquities for a very long time. He claims this archway at the bottom of the Osiris shaft doesn't go anywhere. So why is it built and why is it bricked over? So there's a lot to be said about that. There's a ton of evidence that shows that these tunnels connect throughout not just the Giza Plateau, but all the way through to Dashur, close to the Bent Pyramid, which I have studied immensely. And I believe, potentially, considering what I've seen in places like outside of Aswan, Egypt, and outside of Karnak Temple in Egypt, I believe the same exact architecture is seen underground as we see in Derenkuyu, Turkey. The underground city that's 18 floors down, used to hold over 20,000 people, was never an example of cave-in during construction in the bedrock, took a huge amount of time, has these huge holes that go down into it from the surface, and they call them vents. I call nonsense on that. And, of course, have very strange structural styles. And we found ourselves finding more neck space. This is an incredibly large room for the structure. There's only a few places in the structure that are this big that I've seen. I'm sure there's many more underground further where we're not allowed to go. All right, guys, 1 foot at a time through some of these. I mean, they had to use these for functionality, so there was no point in doing more work than necessary, obviously. Something I've noticed stands out in these sites. Another echoey chamber here, and there is another very strange little way up here, so I'm gonna climb in there and see what's hiding. I'm literally squatted all the way down. This is how you gotta climb in here. And to think the other area over there is caved in maybe a quarter of that height, you can imagine I would have had to be on more than all fours. I would have had to be on my stomach to get through. There is just a massively carved out tunnel that curves up there. How on earth did they do that? Obviously no one's fitting in there, but they managed to tunnel out this space, and there's curvature to it, so they didn't like put a pole in there and turn it around a bunch of times to create a tunnel effect. That looks about as small as humanly possible. And I have no idea if this is a good idea, because once I'm in, there's probably not a whole lot of room to turn around, but we gotta enjoy the adventure a bit, so let's try this out. Oh man, this is crazy. Okay guys, so this is probably a terrible idea, but usually I would not do this in a million years, but it's tantalizing, so let's try this out. Kind of stand up here. I need more calories for this, or to just get in shape in general, but you can see that they've hooked up some wiring. I wouldn't touch it, it's probably direct current.
But let's climb on into here. This looks like a huge room. So my question is, how small did they break these stones into to get them out? Because we just saw how small that tunnel is. Check out how big this room is. Oh my God. Oh my God. Look at that. This is like a grand gallery. Let's turn around this way. Look at these stairs. Just enormous stairs here. Probably look original to the structure. And you can see it's boarded up at the end. What did this go to? They got rocks here, and look at this. Look at this archway. One piece of rock just carved out. And you know what's weird? I have not seen a whole lot of evidence of torches anywhere in here for lighting. You need lighting in here, so obviously you would assume that they would have torches, and there's no residue from char or anything anywhere in here that I've seen so far. Someone might correct me. Please do if you've got images or video of it, but I've looked around here. I've not seen any char, but it looks like a place that you put a torch. There's no evidence that it was, though.
Where sometimes you're climbing through an area that you have to be on your chest and climbing with your back to the top of the tunnel like a snake going through this tunnel system for 20 minutes, and then you get out in this massive room with stairs that are 2.5 feet high. So you have to be basically a little person to get through the tunnels to get there, but once you get into the room, you have to be a giant to climb these stairs. The mysteries are immense, and I believe that we see a connection between these underground cities and what we're seeing right now in Egypt. And these underground tunnels in Egypt, we also see them in Israel. We see them in Saudi Arabia. We see them in Iraq. We see them in all of ancient Samaria, and we see them, of course, like all the way in places like Paris, where there's evidence that the catacombs were actually just added to from much older structural tunnel systems. And they're all over the world, by the way. So there's a lot that we have to consider here. And this Khafre project, by the way, that found this amazing evidence below the Great Pyramid of Giza, wants to do excavations. But they'll never let them do it. Think of Zawiyat Awyan, the massive underground pyramid structure in Egypt that they put fences around and made a military base and covered in garbage years ago. That's a real thing. One of the most amazing discoveries in Egypt, massive underground system. As soon as they lifted some massive stone at the bottom to look underneath to see if there's anything underneath it, the site was shut down and they filled it with garbage from Cairo and Giza. And it's absurd. It's a travesty. And now it's covered in sand, and now there's a military base over it. Similarly, we see that in the past with the Dashur complex, with the Bent Pyramid, the Red Pyramid, the Black Pyramid, etc., which, of course, was opened in, I believe, 2019, and I got to explore it a lot in 2020. And it's an amazing structure, and I urge you to check out our video on it. But with what we're finding at the Great Pyramid of Giza and with all the other pyramids, I want to also make clear that I'm not someone that could read this kind of radar, and I don't know many people who can. So I want to credit Jimmy from Bright Insight for also pointing out that while it's great, it helps our narrative a lot, which we've been trying to get out there for a long time, it's also worth pointing out that we don't really know how to read these blueprints, these results. And it could very well be exaggerated, the things that we're seeing coming out of the Great Pyramid of Giza in the bottom. Because, I mean, when you look at the scan and then put it up against the animations, it's kind of strange. We do see a lot of striations. We see evidence of the tubular systems coming out of it for sure. But to what extent, I don't know. So when I was in the Great Pyramid of Giza in 2020, in the subterranean chamber, one of the weirdest experiences I ever had, I could tell that there was a massive ecosystem and it was not meant for humans. I've detailed this in my interviews on the Rundown Live. I've talked about this with Jimmy from Bright Insight, and I've talked about this to exhaust with a lot of videos that I've done in the past. But nonetheless, when you get down there, there's what looks like a giant well. And in that giant well, It looks like boulders have been actually used to seal it up to some degree. Now, water used to come from the Nile and fill up that room, and it's crystallized, it's dusty, you feel sick after you go down there. And it's unlike any other part of the Great Pyramid. And it fills with water, sends vibrations up the pathway towards the entrance, and then bounces off the corner and goes up the Grand Gallery. And if we have these other systems, these other what they call chambers that they found in these scans surrounding this area, then, and they all look like the inside of a battery according to the original patents, which makes sense because those are based on ideas by Nikola Tesla, and Nikola Tesla said that the pyramids created energy. If you follow that, it then creates this vibration and it focuses electricity to the top of the pyramid, which many people said utilized gold. And by the way, if you look at a VCR, a CD player, if you look at an MP3 player, do those even exist? A cell phone, whatever, they use gold, copper, and these kinds of metals in order to focus the energy. So that's been happening for a long time, apparently much longer than a lot of people believed. And then comes in how old the pyramids are, likely insanely older than they used to be. Remember, there were mounds that the pyramids were originally built on, existing mounds. But how do those mounds perfectly match up with the stars? How do they perfectly match up mathematically and on this perfect ley line? Well, very likely there was already something existing underground before the pyramids were built on top of them. And Graham Hancock has talked about that. John Anthony West had talked about that years ago. I believe that this could be the case. I do believe that there's an underground electric system, and it could bring in the theory that Earth is one giant machine and that it's not even a natural occurring object. It's an actually created, manufactured object or machine that we're living on today, which is a mind-blowing theory, a mind-blowing thought. But those theories have been made by many about the moon. I've heard David Icke talk about this as well, and it could very well be the case. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on it, but it's a very interesting idea that comes with this theory. So something worth thinking about. We have done many videos in the past on lost ancient civilizations. We've talked to Brian Forrester about these underground systems and Jimmy and others. And, you know, unfortunately, those of us that came years ago that talked about this stuff, no one gives a damn about us. It's suddenly new information, and then every grifter is going to pile on and say, look what they found. I'm the first to talk about this. I've been talking about this for like 8 years regarding the underground systems under the pyramids. And many have come long before me. You know, again, Graham Hancock is a great example, John Anthony West, Dr. Robert Schock, and many others. And I believe that credit won't be given to those of us who really spoke out about this and tried to get that information out years ago and were called crazy. Nonetheless, I'm happy to see it moving in this direction because I can't even imagine the look on Zahi Hawas's face when this information came out. And I would pay good money to see it. Anyway, I figured I'd do this unscripted video on this today, and I'll get into it further in the future, going into these scans, these identical structures that we're seeing within the pyramid and below, and how this leads to a system of free energy worldwide as well. Not to mention what the ancients said about all of this, which, by the way, they said a lot. And if you haven't yet already, you could check out my videos from the reshot structure in 2019, my videos from below the Great Pyramids, the Osiris Shaft, other tunnels from around the world, including Derenkuyu. They're on our channels. A lot of them got deleted by YouTube at World Alternative Media years ago, but we've tried to back them up as much as possible on a lot of these platforms. But nonetheless, make sure to subscribe to our videos on Ancient Wonders over at YouTube. Again, make sure it's the channel with my face as the image. And of course, Josh Sigurdson, which is also a backup channel we have on YouTube, which has a lot of ancient videos on it as well. And you could donate to our GoGetFunding.com campaign, our Patreon, our Subscribestar. We have a PayPal address, ancientwonderstelevision@gmail.com. And of course, we have a Bitcoin address. and a Cointree link with a bunch of different cryptocurrencies that you can donate in if you please, including privacy coins. Remember, we're going into a reset. They've erased everything from our past. We need to understand our past to understand our future, and what they want to do is erase us once again. The Hall of Records gone, and of course, the move into a reset where everything we've ever accomplished has been erased, and we start over again and again and again, like Groundhog's Day. And we can really look at these ancient resets, and going back to the Younger Dryas period, as a great example of how we've built up and we've lost and we've been destroyed so many times before, from flood to catastrophe to the melting of stone in Tanis, Egypt. There's so much that humanity has forgotten. As Hancock says, it's that we are a species with amnesia. And I truly believe that is the case. So I appreciate everyone watching. We'll have much more on this in a more structured manner in the future. But until next time, thanks for watching. Subscribe, hit the like button, share on social media. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.